This conference will now be recorded.
This be a photo.
Okay, we're going to continue on now with the budget workshop. I know there's an agenda, but my printer's dead, so I didn't get it printed out. So I'm not sure what the order of business.
Okay, let me pull it out.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I have a issue with with moving forward because some of us, especially myself, being new to the board, hasn't received any data, any background, anything, any emails or anything pertaining to the budget, and I don't feel that we should move forward or do any type of action until everybody's brought up to speed, because I won't be able to make a sound decision or really help out with this process at all, because I don't have anything to show as far as the budget in my hand.
Dietrich, I think it's, or yeah.
we're literally just going to actually present and list it. It's going to generate questions. That's the idea. We're still waiting on a lot of question marks on revenues. So this is just the presentations. It's essentially the same budget we used last year. There's a small presentation on that the staff is prepared on the process.
But I think that the process itself is,
we're
yeah, I
not
know
voting.
we're not voting, but it's still, I think the process itself is flawed, because I think we should have had something in hand, or I should have been brought up to speed right now to really be in the conversation.
Did resend it. I think
But
everybody.
24
we're
hours
literally going to go through what she sent you this morning, line by line.
But for me to get it this morning is not enough time for me to adequately do my homework to be a part of the process. That's what I'm saying.
We have 2 weeks to do our homework. It's not going to be officially presented to go to the county until.
But what I'm saying is, as
26th.
far as what I'm telling you is, as far as us as a group, as a quorum, to sit down and have a good conversation, there's no way for us to have a conversation without giving us the proper materials that we need to even make a good argument if there was one. I don't have anything sitting in front of me that would say that I'm sitting in this chair for a reason, advocating for anybody or putting together a good agenda moving forward. There's no way I can do that, because I don't have anything in front of me that would show that I can be a part of this process.
Dietrich, I think the way, and if I remember from last year, is that really this is just an introduction to the budget, that we all have a similar framework to then go back and think about it,
yeah.
and then review it again, because this is the first of like 3 or 4 meetings about the budget. And so like I've also haven't seen anything. I have no idea what to expect. But I do know that I think it's I mean, basically what we're doing is we're just kind of sitting down and being introduced to the budget for the first time.
Okay, but I want to make it known before we move any further that if it's anything that we have to discuss, or if there's any type of correspondence that we should have, it should be a timeline that everybody receive the same articles as soon as possible. Or if there's anything in our in our wording that would make sure that we have all of the literature that we need to move forward. I just want to make sure that we are on the same page moving forward.
We are, and this is, like I said, this is the staff presenting their budget to us to look at and review before we make a decision on the budget. We already know what the millage rate's going to be. The budget has to fit that millage rate. This is just an idea looking at how the budget was formatted. This is not a decision. If you have questions, that's the idea. We want to generate the questions from the board as to what we want to move forward with.
Chairman, this is Dr. Robinson.
Go ahead.
I have a similar concern that Dietrich has, and it's because I was hoping that we could generate questions at this meeting, because if we're going to approve a budget, I don't understand. I wasn't clear on why we were just getting it 9 o'clock in the morning either. Now, part of, if you can recall, Mr. Lukakis has said to us to avoid these kind of conversations. It is important that as board members, we have what we need in our hands in a timely manner. And in this case, it did not happen. And I had the same concern that Diedrich has, is if I'm going to get something 9 o'clock in the morning, I've got a 10 o'clock meeting prior to this meeting. When do I have time to read it? When do I have time to decide that the question I would have asked is not on this presentation, or it is there and I don't need to ask it? So I agree. I think we got to quit making excuses and just get to the board.
It's not an excuse. What this is just giving you the budget to look at.
All I'm suggesting is that we work on, as a board, we work on a better way of getting what we need in order to effectively support the staff in what they need.
They are giving us the outline for the budget for us to come up with questions about. We're not doing the questions today. That'll be done at the next workshop.
It would have been helpful if we had these documents before 9 o'clock this morning. It would have been helpful if we'd had this documentation before 9 o'clock this morning.
It's for us to review before the next meeting so we can come up with the questions that we have.
It would have been helpful if we'd had this information prior to 9 o'clock this morning.
The idea is so that we are just getting it so we can start the budgeting process. The first board workshop technically was a presentation about revenue and grant funding. This is the first step of a long process to approve the budget, which we have to have by the end of June to the county.
Other than
We're just going to read through it and get a list of the items. That's all they're doing today.
Instead of saying because of COVID, we don't have it. My question to the CEO would be, why did we not get this before 9 o'clock? And I don't want an answer this morning. I do not want an answer.
Tabitha, you had a question. I saw you waving before.
Where's the stuff that we asked for in January?
Which,
at
the
the
February
last
meeting?
Yeah, February, I'm sorry.
The one where they did the grant presentation?
You mean a 6-page little thing?
Yeah, that's all we did in February.
Right. We asked questions for information then. Nobody's responded to any
On the
of that.
grants? I don't remember questions. I see Terry. Terry, you want to tell us where we are?
Sure. So the request was made at the February workshop to mirror our recommended budget after the county submission forms. Staff discussed that with county management and received the template, and the PDF that was attached to the email is that document and contains our budget information in the Chatham County recommended budget template.
Right, but where are the contracts in there?
Yes, they're part of the supporting schedule in Appendix 4.
And so that's what we got this morning?
Yes, so today is to transmit the information. We have until June, well, the week before the June 23rd meeting to finalize everything. So staff has prepared an overview, and then we were going to go through the table of contents of the new budget document because it's new this year. And then we were going to take input and guidance and give the board from today until June 10th or June 15th for questions, responses, and input.
But I'd like to piggyback on Commissioner Dell, if you don't mind. Your question was, why did we not receive the answer to our question in February? Am I correct?
Right. And why do I don't really understand what the purpose of this meeting is. If you just giving us the stuff now, how can we give you input? Because we don't have time to process it. Why don't you just give it to us? This is so backwards.
So we have an overview. Go ahead, Dr.
Why don't we let them do the presentation and then decide the next steps?
But we did something similar in February.
Presentation.
But
No,
we
that
did
was
that,
on grant funding and revenues. This is
and
on
we,
expenses.
but we still didn't get what we asked for in February. That's my only concern. My only concern as a board, we got to support staff. Staff has got to provide us with what we need so we can support them and the CEO.
So the
Yes,
document,
and
the
everybody who
recommended
was at the
budget.
meeting in February asked questions and they were answered.
So the
No, they
recommended,
weren't answered.
No,
We were told they would be answered. And, you know,
they-
where's the consultant list? There's a whole bunch of stuff we didn't get.
yeah, the
This is
contract.
backwards.
Yeah, come on.
the consulting list and the professional and contract services are a part of the supporting schedules in Appendix 4. The
That you
budget
gave us this morning at 9 o'clock.
Right, so we've developed the budget document based on input from the February meeting. It's been developed and is being presented today to begin the board review and input process.
Now, again,
Yeah,
you
but
can,
I don't even have it printed. So I can't even go through it. Plus, I can't go through it while I'm on my iPad in this meeting. So it really can't be presented. I mean, I need to print it at my office. And you sent it at 9. Y'all,
The budget was not balanced until Saturday afternoon, and the schedules had to be incorporated and completed.
since
So
February.
we've been working on the budget since February.
Then we
yes.
should reschedule this meeting until we have time to print this thing and look at it, because you can present it, I can't see it.
So Commissioner Odell, if what the goal of this meeting is that we were just gonna kind of give you an overview of the budget process and what we've been doing. It's a 5-month process. How do we got the submissions from our department heads, and then we had some follow-up questions and some requests we had to go back to those folks. And then on top of that, and then the CFO Terry and myself, we had to review, and then we had some follow-up discussion. And like Terry said, it was Friday evening that her and I finally.
I understand, Michael. Michael, I don't want to be totally interruptive, but sweetie, this is the same thing that happened last year.
yes.
This is what happens every budget meeting time. We get it, you know, we have a workshop, we talk about questions, we get it back, and we don't get it before the meeting. Reschedule the meeting if it's not ready, so that we have time to
Can they
print
do
it.
the
We could have done the meeting
presentation
tomorrow.
first before we decide that?
Well, I just think that,
Dr. Robinson, you weren't here last year for the budget process.
but
This is your first time. They do a presentation just like they did for the grants, how they developed the budget. Then it is up to us to formulate our questions to bring to them at the next meeting.
and that's why
They
I
have a
deferred to,
15-minute presentation. We're all here. Let's listen to it.
that's why I deferred to
Give the staff a
Commissioner
chance
Odell.
to do their job.
That's why I deferred to Commissioner Odell, who was there, and her concern is echoing my concern, and I wasn't here. So
And I
my
was
concern
there,
is,
and there wasn't this problem. We went through the budget in a room with 9 people, and we went through every single line and discussed every single expense.
I feel
That's
tend
the
to
next
think that I
meeting.
was a little, no, I wasn't okay in the budget meeting. No.
Everybody sat there and we went through every single item. I know you asked staff training specifically.
I know, I asked
That's
a
how good my
lot of
memory
questions.
is. Let them do their damn presentation. That's why they're here.
They can do it, but
We're
Michael,
not
what I'm
making a
saying
budget
is,
decision.
they
This
didn't
is
even
their
give us the
process.
stuff from the last meeting. I mean, they can do it. Do it.
We're not voting on anything. We're just getting their introduction to how the budget was formulated.
I think that is
We
best.
have no idea what the revenues are going to be. So this is all formality at this point. Does anybody know what our tax revenues are going to be in June? No one, because COVID cut the state budget 40%. Are we going to see 40? Are we going to see 50? When is the city going to be able to start the services that pay for our services? We're not getting that revenue. Does anybody know what date the circulator's coming back in, or the other buses? No, the city hasn't determined that. We haven't got any clues yet. And if no one has an idea and this comes up and we finally know on June 11th, then we have 5 days to get it ready. This is the beginning of that process. Let them do their darn jobs. That's what we pay them for.
We don't have a problem with them doing their job. The problem that we had is the
The
timing of
effectiveness.
and how effective it is, and for us to get it. I mean, I'm just standing in protest of the way the process is being brought
Fine,
to us. That's
I'm
it.
going to have them give the presentation. If anybody wants to leave the meeting, that's your choice.
Well, I just wanted to put it on record that I stand in
I have
protest.
it on record. You sent me an
And,
email this morning.
and Chairman, I take exception to the language that
Tone.
you're using.
And the tone.
Well, that's fine. Then everybody can get off and we won't have this meeting. I don't really care anymore.
Again,
We can have
Chairman,
the
you can't say that you don't care.
Everything
We
is
can
a
have the
major
presentation.
issue. If
Let
you don't
them,
want to
I
hear,
mean-
follow the agenda and hear the presentation, then I'll cancel the meeting. I'm fine. I got
Chairman,
things to do too.
Chairman,
But
I
as
take
chairman, you
exception.
can't say that you don't care. You can't say that as chairman.
I can
I
say
take
what
it-
I want.
No, you can't.
Chairman,
Not as chairman. If you represent us as the board, you cannot say that you don't care. But
I
what we are
brought them
giving
on.
you
We
is
have an
as an
agenda.
overview of how we feel.
We have the agenda.
I understand that, but what I'm doing is that I'm
can
addressing what
listen
you
to
and
the
I were just saying. You
presentation or
cannot
not.
say
I'll
what you
adjourn the
just
meeting
said.
just as quickly as I started it.
Well, if that's the way you feel, that's the way you feel. But I'm giving you it, how I feel at this moment, the way this meeting is being ran. Now, if we have to get a clarification from the attorney to find out if we're doing this the right way, then maybe we need to instruct him on how we're moving forward in this meeting. But as a board member, I'm asking you as the chair to be a little more professional when we're coming forward with issues that we have to deal with, especially with dealing with the lifeline, which is the budget.
Then let them do their presentation so we can find out where we are.
But I just want to make it known I'm in protest.
That's fine. I just said if someone wants to go off the meeting because they don't want to hear it, that's not my choice. As far as I'm concerned, the agenda item is for Terry to give a presentation, so that's what I'm going to move to. Go ahead, Terry.
So Michael, did you want to do the introduction and the overview?
Yeah, I'll circle back and do a quick introduction and overview. So as I mentioned before, this is a 5-month process for the budget. We are about 6 weeks behind. I'm not making
Excuse
excuses.
me, Mike, can everybody mute so all the background noise is out? This is not time for commentary. This is time for us to listen to the staff presentation.
Okay, so
Mike Brown, point of order. I'm going to log off this call. This is Commissioner Jones. I'm going to log on this call because I'm not going to be listening to anybody be belittled, and I'll have my comments later on in our next meeting. Thank you.
That's fine.
okay, so I'll continue if you like, Chairman, with the overview. Okay, so anyway,
everybody to be mute, but Michael.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, it is a 5-month process. We are about 6 weeks behind. I'm not making excuses of COVID, but COVID is part of the reason for the delay. We got submissions from our department heads. We had some follow-up questions, and then the CFO and myself reviewed, and we had follow-up discussions. And it was this Saturday evening, May 9th, that the CFO and I were able to balance the budget with revenues and expenditures equal to the $27,427,829. So at this time, I will turn it over to Terry so she can do the quick PowerPoint presentation, and then I will follow up with next steps after that. Terry?
Thank you, Michael. So I'll pick up with the budget calendar revision where Michael left off. So today, the second budget workshop, May 12th, 2020, we are presenting the CEO or Executive Director's recommended budget. We will have the first reading and first public meeting during our board meeting on May 26th. We'll have an extra public meeting in the afternoon and evening on June 10th with our second reading and public meeting to include the approval of the FY 2021 budget at the June 23rd, 2020 meeting. The county will take our budget and our millage recommendation and act on that on June 28th, 2020. So a quick overview of our FY 2020 financial objectives. We were hoping for an additional $258,740 to be put in our capital reserves. The actual increase was $750,000, which resulted in an operating reserve of $1.6 million. This year, our budget submission included manager and director initial submissions on February 27th. We had review meetings with each chief and department head. We asked additional questions, got responses, and then continued that follow-up process through last week. The initial submissions were reviewed together with the CEO at the end of last week, and now we have a draft proposed budget. It's balanced as of May 9th. It incorporates the final FY 2021 strategic initiatives that required additional cost. It presents a balanced budget with revenues equal to expenditures. So our FY 2021 budget assumptions, no millage increase. Our millage remains at 1.15. This will be the third year of a static millage rate. The tax digest growth is estimated at 3%. Our service levels are remaining stable at 181,500 hours. Wage increases up to 3%. Union is contracted at 3%, and administrative is a merit up to 3%. Our inflation factors are ranging from 2.3 to 15%, with the detailed CPI factors listed below. The 15% has actually been reduced to 11.2 on our health insurance increase. So the resulting budget showed revenues and expenditures equal to $27,427,829. And we have no extra money to add to the contingency reserve this year. When the department requests were finalized, we did have a deficit. We applied a 10% cut across all departments for general and administrative expenses, a 5% cut across all departments for materials and supplies expenses. And we also removed all travel training costs associated with staff conference attendance from manager, director, chief, and board level. We had to make all of those adjustments just to get revenues and expenditures balanced. We have from the Strategic Planning Committee 3 extra items based on feedback, which would include funding for re-engagement with the Let's Go, an alternative that shows the system redesign at county-wide levels, and the completion of a comprehensive transit development plan. Our anticipated revenues by category are shown on this slide. You can see the percentage that each revenue category makes up. Of importance is the transit tax. It provides 45% of our revenue streams, and it's estimated to be right at 12.5 million next year. With the unknowns and the uncertainties and the potential of a recession, we do feel like the transit tax revenues will stay stable Next fiscal year, any decrease in market value on rooftop tax with our FY 2022 budget. So this is a visual of our revenue categories. You can see that the transit tax is the majority of it, with passenger fares and grant assistance in the form of operating assistance coming in second and third. Our expenditures by category look like this. You can see that the majority of our costs goes toward our service delivery departments, which are fixed route operations, maintenance, and the call center, along with the paratransit and services. Our capital budget.
Can everybody mute after the train going by other than Terry who's talking? Thank you.
Our capital budget and the resulting program of projects is developed based on available state, FTA, and FHWA capital grant program funds, in addition to local match from our special purpose local option sales tax and other stakeholder agencies. Of note, the Trade Center and the SAMI Board through the City of Savannah. Submitted capital request totaled $21.9 million. Once we compared those requests to the available funding, we were able to fund $20.8 million with $1.1 million in a contingency holding bucket. We will look for additional grant funding and hope to fund the contingent request as the year goes on. So this year we mirrored the budget document at the board's request after the county budget document. It contains a CEO budget message, the operating budget, a chart that lists authorized staffing, several appendixes, which will be the 2021 budget calendar as revised, the proposed operating budget, the proposed capital budget. Appendix 4 has the supporting schedules, which includes transit tax receipts from FY 2018 to 2019. This chart shows you how the cash that comes in every month varies drastically month to month. We have the training and travel plan, which only consists of training opportunities and in-house training, on-site training for staff. We had to remove all training and travel to conferences. There's also a schedule of professional fees and contract services that lists the vendor and amount by department. And then the last supporting schedule in the recommended budget document is the paratransit fully allocated cost that projects and estimates our paratransit revenue from the county through their M&O fund. So that's the PowerPoint, and I'm going to minimize that if I can get it off the screen. So, PDF document and the table of contents for the new template is on my screen now. Can everybody see that?
I can see it. Thanks, Terry.
So this is the new document, and it's set up similar to the county document. It gives revenues and expenditures in summary on page 11 and 15, and it also goes through the line item for each department in pages 15 through 25. So this document is right at 40 pages, and it is being presented to the board today for review over the next 8 to 10 weeks, and staff will take any guidance, input, and recommendations for additions or changes to this document and to the budget as we work through the next steps, which is the first reading at our May meeting, the public meetings on June 12th, and then the final reading and adoption scheduled for the June meeting on June 23rd. So that's all we have today.
So this is the PDF that you're showing us now. This is something that we asked for in February, I believe, because I think there was, right? And this is the change. This is the biggest change that we're probably, well, I mean, there's lots of changes in here, but this is the biggest form change that the budget will take.
Yes,
In terms
this is
of
the
how
first year that we've developed a recommended budget document, and we mirrored the Chatham County recommended budget at board request.
Do we have this document now?
Electronically in PDF form, yes. And today, staff just
Cool.
wanted to do an overview of the new template, and I can go, you will see that the revenues show FY19 actual, the FY20 adopted, the CEO proposed, and there's also columns for dollar increase and percent change. When you get to
Well, real quick, what is that? What is that? You're calculating the percent change from 2020 to 2021?
yes,
Okay.
FY20 adopted to FY21 proposed on the
Okay.
revenues. When you get to the detailed expense accounts, which are what we usually describe as line item, they're toward the back of the document, and you will see, let me get to the expenses. Just a little bit of a different format.
This
You'll
looks nice.
FY19 actual, FY20 adopted, then there's an extra column for the FY2021 requested. So this column shows what the departments asked for, and I think that that was a board request. And then the last column is the revised and balanced budget, which becomes the CEO proposed. Then you have the same percent change. And you'll get this for every department, for every expense line item in those departments.
Very cool.
And toward the end, we have supporting schedules, revised budget calendar here. The board format, we included this income statement because this is the way that we presented at the board meeting for the first reading. The capital budget in the same board meeting first reading format. This is the schedule of how our cash comes in, the transit tax receipts for the last 5 years, 6 years. I've got my go-to meeting covering some of my years, but from 2018 to 2021, this shows how our money comes in, and you can see that it can vary widely. The money comes in as people pay their taxes. So you see larger receipts in November and December, also in June, very little activity June, August, September, October, and February, March, and April. Good reference tool when you want to look at our cash flow and our cash projections and the timing of how our money comes in and why we need the operating line of credit for those 3 months in the first half of the year and 3 months in the second half of the year when the cash that comes in is low. So the next 4 pages is our training and travel plan. I left the conferences in and zeroed those out so we could see what we usually do on a normal year. But the only cost that have been entered are for internal staff training and then also for Savannah Chatham Day. The conference travel and registration costs were removed in order to balance the budget. So the next and last supplemental schedule shows all of the professional fees, which is where we record consulting fees, and then also all of the contract services fees and the amounts that are included in the recommended budget. The very last page is the fully allocated paratransit cost, which gives us the revenue figure for paratransit revenue and fees from the Chatham County MNO. So that's an overview of the new document and the new template. And that's really all we had prepared today to introduce the new document and the setup of the document and how the information is arranged and contained. We can at this point add any additional support schedules and can answer individual questions on the data presented as they come in. We usually have the questions sent to Mike and Beverly with Dr. O'Halloran copied, and then staff prepares a formal executive summary with all questions as asked and staff responses. And usually during the process, we turn over 2 or 3 executive summaries. So we'll wait 3 or 4 days or 5 days, get the questions and answer them, and then repeat that process the next week and the next week as we roll through board review, guidance, and input.
I have a question. This is Dr. Robinson. There was a slide on contract service fees that I'd like to see again. And my question is, we see the fees, do we see who those contracts are with?
So if we have an ongoing contract and it will carry over to next year, the firm is identified. Some of the contract services planned for next year have not been procured, so you won't see a vendor there. For example, on the page here, we haven't identified the federal government and state and local legislative vendors because we're in the process of getting that procurement out. But for example, toward the bottom of the page, we have identified the audit services which were procured and awarded a couple of months ago. So when we know the vendor, it's listed, but when we don't and will procure during the year, a description of those services is given.
So the fee is based on what we paid last year to the existing vendor? How do we come up with that dollar?
When it's a multi-year contract, it is in the contract. So for example, Malden and Jenkins are our new financial and single auditors. Their contract fee for next year was $25,000. So yes, either by contract or an estimate based on independent cost estimates compared to historical trend.
And I have one other question. The financial institution that have CAT's money, is it we only have one? Is it just Wells Fargo, or we have monies in other financial institutions?
We have our operating account, our grant receipts account, and our workers' comp and payroll closing accounts at Wells Fargo. And any investments which represent our contingency reserve are held with the Georgia Fund 1, similar to the county investments.
We have two financial institutions.
Yes, Wells Fargo and then the state investment Georgia Fund.
Okay, just so that I'm clear, I want to make sure that these attachments include a list of the consultant and contract services for the last couple of years, which is what I asked for in February.
In this document are the professional fees and contract services that are included in the budget. Last year's document had—
No, Terry, I understand what you're including in this budget right here, but I asked for a list of all consultants and contractors for the last 2 years. In February, If they are the same, then just tell me they're the same. If they're not, then please just make a addition to the information that you've given me. Because I
ma'am.
know what I asked for in February.
I can add that to this document for both FY20 year-to-date and last year. And it will be similar, but there will be dollar amount differences and some differences. But I can add 2 more years to the presentation in this document. We have
That
that
will
information,
include
Commissioner Odell.
that will include the contractors, then the contractors and the
Yes,
consultants.
this year,
Yes.
year-to-date, and last year, of course, the contractors are known. It's actual expenses. So everybody will be identified by name.
Okay.
Very cool.
I have a question. Terry, will any of this budget reflect any federal assistance for COVID-19?
So the estimate on the performance period in order to earn the entire reimbursement shows that July and August will have about $300,000 each. So there's $600,000 worth of CARES Act reimbursement included in the 3.7 operating assistance grant revenue category. Yes, ma'am.
So that's already reflected?
Yes, it's already in the revenue projection for grant assistance, which is operating assistance and preventive maintenance.
Okay, thank you.
And I have one other question, and this might be a board question, but within this budget, would this be the budget that the new CEO will be operating under?
Yes, ma'am, but throughout the year, and especially in a year like this, where there's so many unknowns, we hope our ridership comes back at the same level. We hope that market value of taxable rooftops does not go down drastically. There is a mechanism whereby we can amend the budget. So there's an opportunity that once some of these uncertainties and unknowns are clarified, that we could amend or adjust based on the environment that we're dealing with. We could,
Okay,
we're planning on taking a hard look at this every quarter. Things have
Okay.
really been this uncertain. This budget assumes and hopes for no drastic reduction in transit tax receipts and an increase in ridership to a level that's comparable to prior to March. And all of those things might not happen, Dr. Robinson, or they might happen toward the end of the year. So our plan is to take a good quarterly look at this for the first and second quarter of next fiscal year and propose amendments and adjustments if necessary as the global, national, and state economies ramp back up. As time goes by, we'll have some unknowns answered, and we might need to amend or adjust. All that being said, if the new CEO comes in and wants to redo or relook at how we've allocated the revenue streams, we can definitely do an amendment for that too.
okay, and my question was, what I was thinking, as a line item that could be added, can we, is there anything set aside if there are things that the new CEO wants to put in place that could have a cost to it? Can we allocate any funds or a line item that says for new CEO use, or, because when people come in new, there may be things that they want to see that's not included. So can we include a line item that's set aside X number of dollars for that? Is that
We
something
would have to reduce dollar for dollar somewhere else. Right now,
my question, understand what my question is, and I think anybody that's done business before understands that when folk come in new, they want some things, and I'm just suggesting that maybe we consider setting aside some funds in this budget that says for the use of the new CEO. That's just my suggestion.
Understood, and we can surely do that, but we would have to reduce the expenditures somewhere else in the budget.
Yeah,
There's
well,
no-
how we do it, that's up to staff, but that's just my suggestion.
Right. I mean, there are some programs and they're like, well, we've got staff training and several employee programs. There are maybe a dozen expense categories that aren't directly related to service delivery that we could shave some cost off of to add a kind of CEO choice or CEO contingency. But we would have to take it from other categories, other programs, and other expense accounts at this point, because our expenditures based on our service delivery annual hours is exactly equal to our expected revenues right now.
Yeah, well, I would suggest as you work on that, maybe just kind of keep us updated on how that is, how that's coming.
We could come up with a couple of scenarios where if we reduced that dozen or so categories by half, it would give us this much. Removed them, it'll give us this much, and we can present those alternatives.
Thank you.
And just as a side comment, be aware that we have already used our entire surplus budget money and the entire line of credit. So neither of those are going to be available during those 3 lean months of September, October, and November. Tax revenues, we're hoping are at that number, but we do not know.
We will be able to reinstate the reserve once we get the actual cash from the CARES Act reimbursement. That
Right, which
timing
could
is
take up
unknown
to
right
6
now
months.
too. Yep, I feel like we'll have that cash before the federal fiscal year end, but which month we receive the actual cash is still unknown at this point.
And isn't it projected to be paid out over a time frame, like 3 to 6 months, not lump sum?
You earn it every month, month over month, based on your operating cost.
Right.
I would expect to catch up for the months, like say, for example, if we're lucky and we get it in July, we will get reimbursed for March through June. Then in August, we'll get reimbursed for July. And then in September, we'll get reimbursed for August. So
Okay.
we'll have a catch-up reimbursement when it's first available and awarded. And then a few months after that, every month, we'll get a little bit of a reimbursement for eligible operating costs the prior month.
Clarification.
And at this point, we assume we're going to have no revenues from the city of Savannah until that opens up totally, no revenues from the ferry and the other committed monies until all those routes are reopened and functioning at 100%.
The budget assumes that
they
we'll
open
be
half of it, we're only going to get half.
right. So the planning staff has a meeting with the City of Savannah shuttle management team Thursday, and I would expect feedback on when they think they would like to reinstate the DOT and senior circulator. The Weston and the Trade Center have been in contact with our director of maintenance, and toward the end of this month, they have reservations booked for the Weston, and then later on, closer to the end of June, 1st July, the Trade Center has events booked. So it looks like on some level, we'll be running that service again this fiscal year, but the budget assumes that by July 1, we will be back to regular service hours across all modes.
Which we don't know yet, for sure. We're hoping.
I have a question, please.
Go ahead, Ellen. You're not on my screen, so I can't see you.
Okay, Terry, at the commission meeting on Friday, I was under the impression that we had the 1.6 million in reserves. I mean, I thought it said it hadn't been spent.
So it was in the bank account and still is in the bank account right now, the operating account.
Okay.
But we will use that to cover this Friday's payroll, the May 30th payroll and operating cost through June 10th. So yes, it was in the bank, it is in the bank, but we will need it to cover operating and payroll cost through June 10th, which is when we'll get our next transit tax receipts.
Terry, I have one last question, if it's okay.
Yes, ma'am.
There was some conversation at some prior meetings about us paying off $1 million of something that occurred through that fraud thing. We had to pay off $1 million. Can you refresh my memory what was that about?
So the annual $1 million payment was on a long-term note, and that was not related to the 2015 fraud. We did repay $285,000 in grant assistance to the FTA, and that was the only identified reimbursement on the fraud. In 2013, we terminated a delegated management contract with an outside contractor who was running the organization. And when we terminated that agreement, we owed them $6.7 million in operating costs that they had upfronted us in 2013. So we increased our line of credit from 1.7 to 7.7 in May of 2013. And we restructured that debt in December to a long-term $5 million note and a $1.5 million operating line of credit to smooth transit tax receipts. So when you hear about that $1 million payment, it was scheduled payments, $1 million each January for 5 years, and it amounted to 2013 operating costs that weren't covered by the current revenue streams in that year. So it was, the $1 million was not associated with the fraud. It was operating costs from 2013.
So whatever happened to that $1 million that we were able to pay off? Did we just put it back into the budget, or if we had the money to pay that debt, what's happened with that $1 million now?
So Dr. Robinson, the first 3 years, the $1 million was not even in the budget. So on top of the budget, we had to find $1 million in cash to pay that note. In 18 was the first year we actually budgeted to pay that out of current year revenue streams. And it kind of helped us with our cash flow when we did that. And then last year's budget, we did not have the $1 million in debt service, but it was incorporated into service delivery cost in the budget.
And after that debt was paid, that money was moved back into general operating fund, that amount.
Right, yep.
That was my question.
Anything, we just weren't giving away anymore.
Right,
Paid off the debt to Veolia.
it was incorporated into last year's budget. Yes, sir.
Right.
Yep, I'm just thinking simple mathematics says you had $1 million to spend and you paid your bills. I was just wondering, if we found it, we found it somewhere to pay it, then it became extra money once the debt was paid. And I was just asking, where was that $1 million now?
Right. So 14, 15, 16, and 17, we actually, from a cash perspective, ran 2 to 2.5 billion under our requirements. It created a situation where we paid our vendors every quarter instead of every month, and cash was extremely tight. When we budgeted for it in FY18, it helped our cash flow, and then the note was paid off in 19, and that $1 million was allocated to other service delivery and organizational costs. That was done last year.
Yeah, and I just don't think it was ever reflected in the budget that way. That's why I was asking.
So the FY19 budget did have an amount for debt service, and the FY20 did not because the debt was paid off.
And actually, part of what happened, and Terry can correct me if I'm wrong, when Curtis became CEO in 2016, there were lots of changes made to the routes. Some routes were deleted to bring that $1 million back in so we could pay that debt. So
Yes, sir. We did it in a combination. We actually got a 0.15 increase in our millage, and we reduced our service footprint by about 8%. And together, that gave us the ability to make our debt payment without going in the hole. Theoretically, every July in 14, 15, 16, and 17, we started the year out $1 million in the hole, and things just got tighter through the operating cycle. So we renegotiated our contract fees to cover our cost in 16. We budgeted for the debt. We reduced our service footprint, and we got a slight millage increase, and that allowed us to have revenue streams equal to our expenditures so that we weren't crunched for cash and upside down from a cash position every month of the fiscal year. So those changes in 16 and 17 were what put us in a strong financial position and allowed us to start building the first ever contingency reserve. And I'm so glad we had it, because it's allowed us to keep our operations going. And with the CARES Act, we'll be able to reinstate it. Staff is going to recommend that all of the CARES Act cash be put in reserve as we prepare for the unknowns in the economy, and also for possible evacuation costs for hurricane season.
any other questions for Terry? I know Michael had some final thoughts to bring.
Terry, I just wanted.
I'm sorry, Clinton, go ahead. I had one other question.
Go ahead,
I just
Dr.
wanted to
Rubin.
say.
Oh, I can't tell who's coming in. I only have 5 names up. Go ahead, Clinton.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Great. Thank you. I think I like how the information is presented, especially in the PDF. I think that's real handy to look at. I'm interested to see what happens with COVID as related to, lower tax income or heightened operations expenses. But I think you're kind of on the right track. It's just kind of like, we don't really know. So we'll see when we're there, and just try to build up as much of a reserve and be a little bit conservative this year, because there's, you might as well, you track, upwards, or yeah, it's just hard to forecast anything right now. So I think this makes as much sense as any other plan.
And economically, property values, there's always a time lag.
Yeah.
So we very well may see lower receipts due to foreclosures, but we will just have to watch for that and amend when we know. There could be a situation where our ridership does not return to comparable levels. The tax receipts may go down. I feel like it's an FY 2022 budget dilemma, but we're going to watch it every quarter, and we'll amend our budget and, of course, communicate through our regular monthly board reports the operations and the statistics that will help this whole group know what we need to do to stay within budget and to keep our balance sheet financially healthy.
Terry, my last question has to do with the response that we got from the commission meeting, and they're concerned, Ms. Stone, about us keep coming back asking for that line of credit for them to co-sign on. My question is, as we plan forward, how can we ensure that we may not have to ask them that again, or have a break in asking them for that again? But I know that's something you're working on. I know That's just my
I
question.
have a solid and concrete plan, Dr. Robinson. I'll just need y'all to sign off on it. When the CARES Act money is received, we can reinstate the former level of reserve. We can add to that, so we've got a 3-month operating reserve, and we can also add 1.5 to that reserve, and internally, we will be able to fund the timing differences of cash, and we can do away with the line of credit altogether. And I feel like we'll be able to do that by September, so there will be no more need for us to renew an operating line of credit or for us to ask the county to guarantee it after September of this year.
Yeah, and what my thinking is, Ms. Stone, you know, if we have a break in asking, when we do have to ask again, it may not be as contentious.
A conservative plan, I would hate to completely do away with the line of credit because it
Right.
is our only credit. If we could reduce it to $100,000 or $200,000, just in case 3, 5, 10 years from now, we need some kind of financial mechanism, it would be easier for us to do that with the credit history. But if the board and the organization feel like we can do away with it, and we can surely do that with the CARES Act cash reimbursement. And that's going to be our recommendation.
I think what the question was from the commission, if I understood it correctly, was if you need a line of credit, why can't you go after it yourself?
Well, I can answer
Go ahead.
that.
I'm sorry, Ms. Dunn.
Certainly the county can get the line of credit at a much lower rate.
Right.
Than Chatham Area Transit. And as long as we at the county feel like the reimbursement level is there, I mean, we don't have any worries that they're going to default, then we would be foolish not to take advantage of a lower interest rate.
I'm of the field that I like the fact that we are somehow, you know, this can be contentious. I like that it knits us together with the county, that the county's that our best interests become the county's best interests, and that, you know, I think that is a helpful agreement to have. So I support it. I like where it's at now.
But I agree with Terry. If we can reduce it, it makes us look more viable. I agree with Terry, not to do away with it, but not having to ask for so much. I agree with that part.
Right. Prior to 07, CAT had an internal operating line of credit that was secured by their transit tax receipt assessment. Wells Fargo is more comfortable offering a most advantageous rate, which is LIBOR plus 1.5. Right now it's 2.5%. If we have the backing of the county. And I pulled the transit tax receipts back up. There's conversation, and there appears to be a misperception that this is debt that we have to borrow to cover our operating cost, but it's really an effort to streamline our cash receipts so we have that $2 million we need every month to pay our bills. You can see from the FY 2020 receipts that it gets low in August, September, and October, and then again in February, March, and April. So how we use this line, and just for simplistic example, in August we'd get $500,000, in September we'd get $500,000, on October we'd get $500,000, so we can cover our $2 million cash outflows each month, payroll and vendors. Then we pay it down in December to zero. Then we turn around and do the same thing in February, March, and April. So it's no increase in debt, and it's not borrowing to cover more costs than you have revenues. It's just to streamline the timing for cash flow purposes. And we have always paid the note, paid the line of credit, paid the interest from our funds, and the county has never had to participate financially in this obligation. I'm not sure if any business these days operates on the cash basis and doesn't have some kind of operating line. A lot of small businesses sell their receivables in order to turn a receivable into cash. But this line of credit just allows us to make sure we've got cash to pay the bills in those months when people aren't paying their property taxes. But if we put 1.5 in the bank and internally fund that, then we could reduce the line of credit to almost nothing and hold on to it so we've got some kind of credit history if we need it in the future.
Yeah, the major thing with this is the line of credit is determined when about the time the budget's adopted. So all the revenues are guesswork from the next 12 months. This is just sound financial policy to have money available if needed for expenses. You know, we don't know what emergencies are coming up. We would like to have the reserve, and the FTA would like to see it at 3 months of operating expenses, which right now is 6.3 million. Last year we got it as high as it's ever been at 1.2. So keeping that, and we renegotiate that every single year. When it comes up again next year, we'll have the same discussion saying, what should we make it? If it's 500,000, it's 500,000. If it's still 1.2 million, it's still that. There's no point in negotiating that number now. We have that in for this year's budget with the 1.5 available to keep our cash flow going until we can pay off some of the debts we've incurred due to the COVID event. Does anybody have any other questions for Terry? Now, at this point, I know Mike has some final words too, but let's do Mike while he's here. Is Peter there? Beverly, I don't see him. I love that mask. Where are your whiskers?
You're on mute, Beverly.
Oh, there's Peter.
Yes, sir. Sorry about that, Mr.
I
Lakakis.
see him behind your mask.
Yep, Mr. Lakakis is right here. Thank you.
Should we all get one of those for the next board meeting? Those are nice.
Measuring, I had like a little over 6 feet between her and me.
Social distancing. That's what he says. But he's reviewing his budget document.
And I was told if we do have a budget shortage that Pete will cover it.
All right, Pete.
Be pocket change.
He didn't say no.
All right, Mike, you want to make your final comments and then we'll
You bet.
try
Thank
to
you.
end
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. So basically, what we're looking for from the board is for you to provide input and questions for us so we can incorporate if need be and make changes. The second reading will be, let's see, I think it's at the June 23rd board meeting. And if we could have the review, your questions and input by June 15th, I think that will help us to have it ready for the second reading. And that's my closing next step.
And of course, there's any opportunity that we think we need to add another meeting to one of our regular meeting days to go through the line item budget. If anybody is interested in that part of it, Terry can certainly do a step-by-step and word for word on what's in there.
And the other thing, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, if you have any questions or with the questions that you have, if you could email the chairman and myself and CC Beverly, and then we could incorporate that and get your questions answered and address your feedback. And that would be very helpful. And if you want printed copies, or let's see, I think everyone has an email now of this presentation and both the PowerPoint presentation and the document that we created. So if you need any other documents at all, just let us know. I noted that Commissioner Odell would like consultant contractors for the last 2 years. We will provide that. Other than that, that's all I have.
Terry, I see that wave. Go ahead.
Right. So I can incorporate Commissioner Odell's request and also add a couple of alternatives, reduce here and there to add a CEO contingency. I can incorporate those into the current document, and we can print that document and have it available for any board member that wants a hard copy. But once I incorporate those changes, I can send the new revised document to Beverly, and we can send that out electronically. And we will also have a hard copy notebook containing the same information. If you like it hard copy, I like it both ways. So we'll do it both ways, and it will be available by the end of the week.
And available means that Beverly will be instructed to send it to all the board members. Is that right?
Yeah, we can FedEx the notebook.
Yeah, whoever wants a hard copy, let Beverly know and she'll mail it out.
Question.
Beverly, is that a wave or you just?
Yes, it's my hand raised. Mr. Brown, is it a possibility we're going to call for a special call meeting or need a special call meeting next month for health insurance, or is it going to line up with our regular board meeting for June?
I think we'll probably have to do a special call like we have in the past.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
So just to let the board know, it is a possibility we'll have a special call meeting for the month of June.
For the month of June, like we have for the past, well, since I've been here the last 3 years.
Last 10 years.
Okay. So
they're currently shopping the rates to see if we can do any better. Historically, that usually doesn't happen, but Seacoast will do their presentation, give us all the options they received. I think we had 3 last year. 2 were grossly higher than what we're paying Anthem. But yes, if we need to have a meeting, because we have to vote on that at some point, that is a required board function. So we can either, if everything is going to be what it was from last year, we might be able to hold off to the board meeting to vote, but we can have a presentation meeting if need be.
Thank you for that reminder, Beverly. Thank you.
No problem.
Beverly's got that notebook there with all the stuff to remember. I know she does. Any other questions? Like Mike said, you can send any questions through him and I and Beverly.
You see Beverly, yes.
Answer if we need to have a special meeting if there's that many questions and it's overwhelming to do one-on-one, then we can schedule a meeting in June to go through strictly line item, preferably questioned line items. Some of them, salaries aren't we don't have negotiating power there. So in the areas where the budget is somewhat flexible, which is not much, we can make changes. We still have time to do that before we submit to the county for final approval. I'm glad we got through the presentation. I think it gave everybody a lot of the information they've been asking about, which is.
Oh, and one last thing, Chairman, I would like to apologize for not getting the agenda out earlier. That was totally on me. I wasn't feeling well, and I did not forward the information last night. So that was totally on me. That won't happen again.
That's fine. We know we put a lot on you. This last 3 months has been hell. And trying to do everything through this format is even more difficult because it takes twice as long.
Mr. Brown, there's a term called delegation. So you got to learn. You got to do a better job of delegating it. You got to trust the folk that work side by side to help you.
And thank you, Dr. Robinson. And I have no problem delegating. In this particular instance, that wasn't the issue. It was me not forwarding the information out that I received. So, but thank you, Dr. Robinson.
Cleaning dust off my screen. Any other questions? Again, I don't have the agenda because my ink ran out. So join the call. Was there something else? I know I had a spot for final commentary.
It looks like we went through the agenda for the most part. We received board input. That'll be coming in emails, recommendation and questions. And we're now to old and new business. Mr. Brown, is that what you have? And adjournment?
That is
If
correct.
there's any. Okay.
For the chairman and CEO, if there's any old or new business.
Is there any new business?
I don't believe so.
No, we haven't. Next week, governance committee meets and we'll be setting up the agenda for the meeting on the 26th. Let's make sure we get through and get the list of stakeholders and employees that are going to be included in the interviews with John. That can all be done through Beverly because she'll have to send out invites. I know we sent in some names to the.
Yeah, the ad hoc committee is working on that, Chairman.
Okay, and we'll get it to John as soon as everybody's happy with it.
Yes, sir.
All right. Any other questions?
I'm good. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Definitely
you.
like the new format, and I'm glad we got a chance to finally see it.
Good job, Terry. That's exciting.
Take care,
All right,
everyone.
See y'all
Thank you.
later.
Next
Thank
week.
you, everyone.
Bye.
Stay safe.